We have a problem, Batman. Gotham needs you again.
The Court of Owls has controlled Gotham for over 2 centuries, while I thought I knew every secret in these streets. They are the nursery rhyme parents whisper, the conspiracy hiding in plain sight, the power pulling strings while their puppets dance unaware. Lincoln March leads their current operations. He claims to be my brother, using family connection as psychological warfare, while commanding their modern agenda. William Cobb serves as their gray son, the Talon who trained all others, a killer from the 1800s who represents their institutional memory and tactical expertise. The contingency protocol must account for enemies who own the city I've sworn to protect, who built the systems I use to fight crime, who probably watched my parents die and decided whether to intervene. They are the board, and I've been playing their game without knowing the rules. Every victory I've achieved may have served their agenda in ways I'm only beginning to understand. Lincoln March operates as their public face when they need one, using his mayoral campaign and political connections to advance court interests through legitimate channels. His claim to be Thomas Wayne Jr. creates personal psychological pressure, designed to make me question my own identity and family history. This strategy for March requires understanding that he represents the court's adaptation to modern politics, their attempt to control Gotham through democratic processes rather than just shadow manipulation. Direct confrontation with March must account for his political protection and public support, requiring evidence-based exposure rather than violent intervention. His weakness lies in his need for public approval. Politicians who depend on votes can be defeated by voters once those voters understand what they're really choosing. The approach involves systematic documentation of his connections to court operations, careful revelation of evidence that proves his real agenda, and support for legitimate political alternatives that can challenge his authority through proper channels. William Cobb represents their institutional memory and tactical expertise, a gray son who has trained generations of Talons while maintaining his own operational capability. His connection to Dick Grayson creates additional psychological pressure. He is what Robin could become if captured and turned, a member of the Flying Graysons transformed into an instrument of death. Cobb's centuries of experience make him their most dangerous field operative, someone who knows Gotham's history because he lived through it, who understands the evolution of their methods because he helped develop them. The strategy for Cobb requires acknowledging that direct combat may be impossible to win given his skill and experience, requiring instead tactical approaches that exploit his emotional connections or force him into disadvantageous positions. These tendencies, his potential weakness lies in buried memories of his human life, relationships and experiences that existed before his transformation into a Talon. The goal is not necessarily defeating him, but finding ways to reach whatever humanity remains beneath his conditioning. Talon forces represent their primary tactical advantage, undead assassins who feel no fear, no pain, and no permanent death as long as the court can revive them. Each Talon carries decades or centuries of combat experience, muscle memory preserved beyond the grave, loyalty programmed through torture and resurrection. Their masks hide faces that have seen Gotham change across generations, hands that have killed in service of the court since before electricity lit these streets. The strategy for Talons requires targeting their revival mechanisms rather than the assassins themselves, disrupting the resurrection process that gives them apparent immortality, finding ways to sever their connection to court control. This includes identifying the facilities where resurrection occurs, understanding the technology or ritual that enables their return, and developing countermeasures that can prevent revival without necessarily destroying what remains of their humanity. Cold environments slow their function significantly, providing tactical advantages in prepared positions. underground network spans the entire city like a circulatory system, pumping conspiracy through Gotham's veins. These hidden passages allow the court to move unseen beneath the streets I patrol, to watch from spaces that don't officially exist, to strike from angles I never considered possible. The network includes listening posts in government buildings, observation points in police stations, access routes to virtually every important location in the city. The strategy requires systematic mapping of their underground empire, identifying key nodes where their network can be disrupted, developing methods to turn their surveillance system against them. This includes deploying counter-surveillance technology in their tunnels, establishing control points that monitor their movement, creating false intelligence that leads them into prepared traps. The goal is transforming their greatest advantage, hidden mobility, into a liability through superior intelligence and prepared positions. Financial power comes from centuries of strategic investment, inherited wealth, and influence over Gotham's business community. The court owns banks that finance development, companies that build infrastructure, law firms that write contracts, real estate that determines who lives where. Their wealth is old money that has had generations to grow and embed itself in every aspect of Gotham's economy. The strategy involves forensic accounting that traces their financial networks through shell companies and trust funds, identifying pressure points where economic disruption can weaken operations, exposing conflicts of interest that allow them to profit from problems they help create. This includes coordinating with federal agencies that investigate financial crimes across jurisdictions, building cases for asset forfeiture that can freeze resources, developing economic alternatives that reduce Gotham's dependence on court-controlled businesses. Money flows can be tracked and cut off when you know where to look. Historical influence reveals patterns of manipulation spanning generations, showing how the court shaped Gotham's development to serve their interests while appearing to support the city's growth. They influenced urban planning that creates advantageous sightlines for surveillance, zoning decisions that place key facilities within reach of their tunnel network, historical events that seemed random but eliminated threats or consolidated power. The research strategy involves examining city records, newspaper archives, family histories to identify patterns of court influence, connecting historical events to current operations, understanding long-term objectives based on past actions. This includes working with historians who can provide academic credibility to investigations, accessing sealed or restricted records, developing timelines that show how current operations connect to historical precedents. Their methods remain consistent across centuries, making their future moves predictable once you understand their past strategies. What do you think, Alfred?
Master Bruce, you're facing corruption that runs so deep it's become part of Gotham's foundation, but that doesn't mean the city is beyond saving. The court thrives in shadows, but shadows disappear when light is strong enough. Their greatest weakness is dependence on secrecy and public ignorance to maintain power. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against ancient conspiracy isn't superior tactics, but simple honesty, the willingness to expose truth even when that truth is uncomfortable. Gotham still has good people who deserve protection, regardless of who's been pulling strings. The question isn't whether you can destroy an organization that's planned for centuries. It's whether you can inspire enough people to choose transparency over secrecy, justice over privilege, hope over fear.
Alfred's perspective shifts the strategy from direct confrontation to exposure, recognizing that the court's power depends on secrecy and public ignorance. The approach must focus on revelation rather than elimination, showing their existence to a public that can reject their authority once they understand what's been done in their name. This includes developing secure communication channels that can spread information about the court without being intercepted, building coalitions with journalists and civic leaders who can amplify the message of transparency, providing concrete evidence that proves court influence while offering alternatives to their control. The strategy acknowledges that the court's authority crumbles when citizens understand they have other choices. The goal becomes education rather than destruction, empowerment rather than elimination, proving that democracy can triumph over oligarchy when people know the truth. What do you think, Robin?
Bruce, they've been operating in secret for so long they probably don't know how to fight in the open. Their whole power comes from people not knowing they exist. So let's make sure everyone knows. You don't beat a shadow conspiracy by becoming better at shadows. You beat them by dragging everything into the light where people can see what's really going on. Sometimes the best strategy against people who think they're smarter than everyone else is just being honest while they're being sneaky. Let Gotham decide whether they want to be ruled by some secret club or actually have a say in their own city. Their weakness is that they need to stay hidden to stay powerful.
Robin's directness highlights the fundamental democratic principle at stake: citizens' right to know who makes decisions affecting their lives. The strategy must emphasize transparency and public engagement rather than covert operations, treating the court as a political problem requiring democratic solutions rather than a military threat requiring tactical responses. This includes organizing public forums where citizens learn about court influence and discuss alternatives, supporting candidates who commit to transparency and accountability, creating citizen oversight committees that monitor government decisions for signs of hidden influence. The approach relies on Gotham's fundamental decency, trusting that most people will reject authoritarian control once they understand what's being offered. The goal is making the court's secrecy politically impossible rather than operationally difficult, forcing them to accept democratic oversight or abandon their influence entirely. Membership exposure targets the specific families and individuals who compose the court's leadership structure, including the established Gotham elite who use their public respectability to mask private conspiracy. These members include some of the city's most prominent business people, political figures, and social leaders who maintain public reputations while serving private agendas. The strategy involves careful surveillance of suspected members, behavioral analysis that identifies decision patterns indicating court influence, financial investigation that traces resource flows to actual authority figures. This includes development of psychological profiles for known members, analysis of voting patterns and policy decisions that reveal hidden coordination, creating situations that force the court to reveal themselves.